Welcome back to Whisper of the Night. This is the place where forgotten stories come alive, but not as you once knew them. Here, we listen to the whispers behind the fairy tales, the echo of grief, guilt, and quiet truths buried under centuries of silence. Tonight, we revisit a story that many of us were told as children, a mysterious piper, a town haunted by rats, a tune so beautiful it led all the children away. But have you ever asked yourself what really happened in Hamelin? What if the piper wasn't a villain? What if the rats weren't the curse, but the consequence? And what if the true horror wasn't in the music, but in the silence that followed? This is the Pied Piper of Hamelin as you've never heard it before. A tale of broken promises, collective guilt, and a town that learned far too late that some songs never end. So sit back, let the night fall, and listen closely, because not all fairy tales were meant to have a happy ending, and some were never meant to be forgotten. There was once a town that stopped listening. It was called Hamelin. They had brick houses and tidy streets, sweet-smelling bakeries and gold-painted churches. From the outside, it looked perfect, a place where nothing ever went wrong. But no one truly listened. Not to the poor, not to the sick, not even to their own children, whose laughter and tears became background noise in the adults' quest for order, wealth and pride. And so one day, the rats came. Not one or two, but hundreds, thousands, pouring out of gutters, chewing through walls, slipping under doors like oily shadows. They ate the food, gnawed on clothes, nested in beds. But worse, they carried silence with them. A crawling, chewing silence, the kind that grows when people stop hearing one another. The mayor called meetings, promised action, priests preached, parents scolded. But the rats didn't care for words. They only came closer, bolder. They danced on altars, slept in cradles, stared into soup pots with beady, unblinking eyes. And then, on a grey morning when even the church bells refused to ring, arrived. A man dressed in patchwork clothing, colours too bright, steps too quiet. No one saw how he came or from where. He simply appeared at the edge of the marketplace with a smile too wide and eyes like still water before a storm. He carried a flute. Nothing special, just wood with a faint red ribbon tied near its base, the kind of red that looks like old blood in candlelight. "I hear," he said, "you have a problem that doesn't like to listen." They laughed at first, a man with a flute solving a plague of rats. But desperation makes fools of skeptics. And he didn't offer promises, he offered results. "I can rid you of them," he said, voice gentle but sure. "But when I'm done, you must pay me what is fair, gold, not gratitude." The mayor wrung his hands. "Gold we have," he said. "Gold we'd rather keep. But if you succeed, you shall have it." He nodded. No bow, no handshake. Just a whisper, then let them listen to me, and he raised the flute to his lips. The moment he played, the town changed. Not in colour, not in shape, but in temperature, as if the very wind paused to hear the sound. Notes sharp and strange, too old to be remembered, too new to be understood. A melody that tickled the back of the skull and made hearts skip. Not out of joy, but recognition, as if something ancient had awakened. And the rats, they listened. One by one, they came. From holes, from chimneys, from beneath pillows and between floorboards. They followed the sound. Not frantically, not with fear, but with reverence, as though drawn by a lullaby only they could truly understand. He walked, playing, and they followed. Through alleys, across bridges, beyond the city gates. And when the last rat vanished over the hill, the sound stopped. The town stood still. Not a breath, not a rustle. And the piper turned, with empty hands and eyes still unreadable. "I've done my part," he softly. "Now keep your word." But the mayor smiled a different kind of smile. The kind built on greed. The rats were gone. That much was true. But peace did not return. In fact, the absence of scratching and squeaking only made the silence louder, more noticeable. It crept into every corner like cold mist. People tried to fill it with chatter, bells and song. But something had shifted. The town had given its fear away and received unease in return. The piper waited. He stood beneath the statue of the town's founder, a man cast in bronze, holding a scroll of laws in one hand and a coin in the other. The piper looked up at it once, then sat cross-legged on the cobblestone. He did not beg. He did not repeat himself. He simply waited. The mayor, surrounded by advisors and townsfolk, gathered in the hall that night. Behind closed doors, they spoke in whispers laced with cowardice. "Why should we pay him in gold?" someone scoffed. "It was just music. A trick," said another. "He probably trained those rats. Or worse," said the priest, voice quivering. "He made a deal with something that did." They laughed uneasily. "But the people," one councilman began. "What people?" the mayor interrupted. "They'll forget. Just give it a week." So, when the piper returned the next morning, the mayor met him with a forced grin and open palms. "You did well," he said, "and we thank you, but the gold you asked for, it was rather high. Surely you—" The piper did not blink. His eyes, two polished stones, reflected the mayor's own face, distorted and small. "I kept my promise," the piper said, voice soft as soot. "And now you break yours." The mayor stiffened. "You'll take what's offered." Silence. Then a whisper, not from the piper but from the wind itself. "So be it." He turned without a word and walked away. That night, Hamelin dreamed uneasily. Parents tossed and turned, children whimpered in their sleep. Somewhere in the dark, a few infants cried, but not from hunger. They cried as if they'd heard a melody that no one else could hear. The next morning, the piper was gone. And so were the children. It wasn't sudden, it wasn't dramatic, it was quiet. Mothers awoke to cold sheets, fathers found empty shoes at the doorstep. Toys untouched, meals uneaten, no doors broken, no footprints, just absence, so complete it felt deliberate. Surgical. Some tried to believe the children had run away, others wept in the streets, but none dared speak the name of the one who had warned them. And yet, in the stillness of noon, when the bells rang but no children laughed, some claimed they heard a faint tune far beyond the hills, a melody half remembered from dreams. Sharp, hollow, inevitable. The town searched. They screamed, they prayed, but the piper was nowhere. Only his silence remained, and suddenly the rats had never seemed so terrible. There are sounds that no human heart can endure, not screams, not even weeping, but silence, the silence that follows after something irreplaceable has been taken. A silence shaped like a child's name that will never be called again, a cradle that no longer rocks, a lullaby no longer sung. Hamelin drowned in it. The town, once filled with footsteps and scolding and the wild music of childhood chaos, now echoed only with guilt. No bells rang for weddings, no festivals were held. And the schoolhouse, once too noisy to bear, stood abandoned, its chalkboards wiped clean. In the first week there were search parties, men with dogs, women with lanterns. They combed the hills, the forests, the riverbanks, but they found nothing, not even footprints. Some claimed the piper had led them to another village. Others whispered he was a demon and the children were gone forever, swallowed by the woods or spirited into the sky. But deep down, everyone knew the truth. They had been taken, not stolen, not kidnapped. Taken in a way that only comes from the breaking of a vow. The mayor, once bloated with pride, now appeared gaunt. He stopped attending meetings. His gold sat untouched as if it burned to look at. The town council, desperate to shift blame, blamed the mothers. "You should have watched them more closely. You spoiled them. They were too curious, too easily led." But behind closed doors, many of them had lost their own. One woman, a seamstress, sat on her porch each day holding a small pair of shoes she had stitched with red thread, the same thread she'd once used to mend her wedding dress. Her daughter had worn them the day she vanished. She never wept. She never shouted. She just listened to the sound of a song that was no longer being played but still haunted the bones of the buildings and the cracks in the cobblestones. A song that wasn't music anymore, but memory. And in that memory, something began to shift. Not all mourners grieved the same way. Some turned bitter. Some turned to faith. And a few, just a few, began to wonder, what if the piper wasn't the villain? What if he was the mirror? A reflection of what Hamelin had become. A town that valued gold over promises, pride over truth, comfort over justice. They remembered the way they had ignored the cries of the poor, laughed at the sick, and shut their doors to the hungry. The way they had taught their children not by love, but by fear and control. And so when the piper came playing, children had followed, not because they were taken, but because they had already been lost. No monument was ever built for the missing. No day of mourning was declared. But if you walked past the schoolhouse at dusk, you'd sometimes hear it creak, like a chair pushed back or a desk gently tapping as though tiny feet still swung beneath them. And some nights, if the wind hit the stones just right, you could swear you heard a flute, just one note. Then nothing. A reminder that forgetting has a cost, and sometimes the ones who vanish aren't the only ones gone. Time, as always, moved on. Seasons changed. Snow melted into spring. The markets reopened. The bells rang again, though they sounded off, like a song sung too fast, with verses missing. Hamelin tried to recover. New children were born. The school reopened. Laughter slowly crept back into the streets, but it was thinner, quieter, more cautious, as if the town feared that if it laughed too loudly, something might return to take again. The mayor passed away not long after the incident, his name buried without ceremony, his wealth untouched. No one replaced him. The council ruled as a faceless collective, speaking softly and seldom. And beneath the new layer of daily life, the scar remained. Parents now raised their children with double the love and double the fear. Don't talk to strangers. Don't wander near the woods. Don't ever listen to music you don't understand. There was a girl, born after the loss, who often asked, "Why are there no older children in Hamelin?" Her mother would hush her. Her father would change the subject. But one day, while sitting alone in the library, she found a book tucked behind the shelves, one with a drawing of a man holding a flute, his cloak made of mismatched colours. She showed it to her teacher. The teacher turned pale, took the book and burned it. The girl never asked again. But something inside her had awakened, a curiosity, a whisper, and in her dreams she sometimes saw a hill with a cave. Inside it laughter echoed, not cruel but distant, like the sound of children who had not been stolen, but had simply found somewhere else to grow. The adults feared more than just memory, they feared accountability, because to speak of the piper was to acknowledge what had been done, not by him, but by themselves. And so the town buried the past beneath festivals and new traditions. They sang songs with no origin, painted murals of fake victories, and told bedtime stories with no endings. But the silence was never gone, only transformed. It lived in the cautious way people shook hands, in the way no one ever played music in the streets again, in the way every child's toy was stamped with the town's seal, a symbol of control disguised as protection. Years passed. A traveller once came through, humming an unfamiliar tune. It was beautiful, soft, a melody filled with longing. Within an hour he was escorted out of town. No explanation, no charges, just gone. Later, someone swore they had heard a child humming that same melody days before. That child never hummed again. And so Hamelin survived. It prospered even, but it never healed, because some wounds do not bleed, they echo. And every echo is a reminder. When a town forgets how to listen, it must one day live with what it refused to hear. End of part 4. Sự phục hồi bề ngoài. Hamelin hoạt động lại, nhưng là một phiên bản sợ hãi hơn, trấn áp hơn. It began with a name. Just one, whispered in the wrong hallway during a rainstorm by a girl who wasn't supposed to know it. Pied Piper. The word echoed like a dropped glass, delicate, dangerous, undeniable. She didn't know why she said it. She didn't even know what it meant. Only that it had come to her in a dream. A melody without lyrics. A path without footsteps. Her teacher froze. For a second, the room seemed to fold in on itself. The shadows stretched and the candle flickered, though there was no breeze. The teacher smiled, too wide, too still, and said, "There is no such name in Hamelin." But the girl didn't believe her. Not anymore. That week, strange things began to happen. The mural in the square, once a painting of Hamelin's mythical founding, peeled in the night, revealing a different image beneath. Children, dozens of them, marching toward a golden cave. The town council had it painted over before dawn. Then came the dreams, not just for the girl, but for others. Mothers who had buried memory now awoke with phantom lullabies. Fathers who had hardened into stone wept at the sound of distant flutes in their sleep. They began to remember the names, the shoes left by the door, the lies. And for the first time in years, someone said it aloud in the town square, not in fear but in rage. We broke the promise. We let them go. It was an old woman who confirmed what had been long denied. She had outlived 3 councils, survived 2 winters of famine, and remembered the rats as if they were yesterday. "I saw him," she said, voice like dry parchment. "He didn't steal them, they followed, because we taught them to listen to gold, and he offered them something purer." "What did he offer?" a young man asked. She paused, then said, "A song that didn't lie." The town was split. Some demanded answers, others demanded silence. The council called emergency meetings, but every time someone spoke the piper's name, the oil lamps flickered. Some said it was coincidence, others swore it was warning. And then the girl, the one who had first spoken the name, disappeared. No broken windows, no struggle, only a trail of chalk drawings leading toward the forest. At the edge of the trees, a flute was found, laid gently in the grass. It played no sound, but when held, it vibrated like a heartbeat. The town panicked. Old parents clutched young children. The bells were silenced. The school was closed. But something had already shifted. You see, when truth is buried too deep, it grows roots. And Hamelin's soil was no longer solid. It trembled. Stories came back. Old stories, like weeds breaking through cobblestone. The rats had once come because Hamelin hoarded too much grain. The piper had come because Hamelin broke too many promises. And the children had left because Hamelin stopped listening. Then came the knock, a soft tap on the council door. No one was there, but on the step lay a folded piece of cloth, bright, mismatched, woven from forgotten colours, and inside it a single gold coin, polished, pure, familiar, but cold. The flute returned before the children did. It lay on the windowsill of the library, old, cracked, silent. No note was left, no footprints in the snow, only that strange warmth again, as if the wood remembered being played. Some claimed it was a threat, others a gift. The council forbade anyone from touching it, but one girl, the sister of the missing one, reached out anyway, and when her fingers brushed it, she heard it. Not music, not sound, but memory. A chorus of laughter in the hills, a stream splashed with barefoot joy, the piper's melody, not a command, not a curse, but a map, and the map led inward. That night, people gathered in the square, not because they were summoned, but because they couldn't sleep, candles in hand. Guilt in their eyes, the old woman spoke again. "This town," she said, "has worshipped silence too long." She pointed to the mural, once repainted, then scraped clean by wind and time. "Let them see, let the children be remembered." The mayor's name was scratched from the town records that night. The school was renamed after those lost. For the first time, Hamelin rang its bell. Not for warning or for trade, but for mourning. And as the bell rang, something shifted in the soil. A path reappeared. It began near the forest. Not a road, not even footprints, but music felt more than heard. One by one, the townsfolk followed, not out of fear, not with torches or questions, but with open hands and aching hearts. And from the hill, they came. The children, older somehow, wiser, wearing strange clothes of leaves and light, no signs of hunger, no signs of harm, only silence. And standing among them, not at the front, not in command, was a man in a patchwork cloak, the piper. He said nothing, only looked at them all and smiled, not in triumph, not in cruelty, but with sorrow. A boy stepped forward. "Are we allowed to come home?" a woman wept. "You never had to ask." But the piper raised a hand. "They may return," he said, "but not to forget." And then to the children. "Tell them what you saw, tell them what they've taught you, and tell them promises are not meant to be traded, they are meant to be kept." With that he turned. No one tried to stop him. He walked toward the woods, flute in hand, cloak trailing like a shadow too old for light. Hamelin changed, not quickly, not completely, but deeply. A new holiday was created, not to celebrate, but to remember. The story of the piper was taught in school, not as a warning, but as a mirror. And though music slowly returned to the streets, flutes were never played again. Not out of fear, but respect, because some songs never end. They just live in the silence between notes.